Hey folks, welcome to DIG 2500, Fundamentals of Interactive Design. Today we're going to be talking about the design principles for interaction. I am Matthew Mosier, professor at University of Central Florida, and I'll be guiding you through this process. So one of the first things we have to ask is, what is interaction design? What do we mean when we say that? And actually, it's much more about experience than interaction per se. What we really focus on as interaction designers is the experience that users and people have with the interfaces and products we design. It's a very interdisciplinary field. So in interaction design, we'll have a number of different people working on a design team usually. There'll be oftentimes an industrial designer who does product design. There'll be perhaps an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer. There's often a computer scientist or programmer. There will be a visual artist or graphic designer on the team usually. And then we'll have a bunch of human factors people, so people who specialize in human-computer interaction, information architecture, or even ethnography to gather user data and to perform user tests. So it's a quite broad field in terms of the disciplines involved, which is nice because there's a lot of different kinds of people who you might end up working with as an interaction designer, and it creates quite a diverse work environment to be in, which I think is nice. So before I get into the interaction design principles, one of the things that's good to keep in mind are our usability goals and our experience goals. So usability goals are usually pretty straightforward things, like we want an interface to be effective to use. We call this effectiveness. We want it to be efficient to use, or we'll say efficiency. We want it to be safe. We want it to have good utility. We want it to be easy to learn, and once learned, we want it to be very memorable or easy to remember. So looking at these two different kinds of light switches, which one do you think is more efficient and which one is more memorable? Well, the wall switch is usually placed by a doorway, making it quite efficient for turning on and off lights when you enter and exit a room. It can be sometimes difficult to remember which switch corresponds to which light if there's more than one or two switches on the wall. Sometimes you walk into a room and there's like 8 switches there, and you just want to turn on the big light on the ceiling. Which one do you flip? It's not very clear. Whereas the light bulb with the pull chain might not be as efficient because you actually have to walk over to the light source to turn it on. It's very clear that that switch is for that bulb, and when you pull it, you're going to toggle that light bulb. This makes it very memorable and very learnable too. So those are our usability goals. There are also experience goals. And experience goals are things like we want it to be fun, we want it to be enjoyable, we want it to be satisfying experience. We might want it to be aesthetically pleasing or rewarding or emotionally fulfilling. And I'll say that a lot of these goals I just listed have to do mostly with products that we want to sell, right, or that we're making for a particular client. As visual artists, while you might want your work or your performance to be participatory, to involve some interaction, you might not necessarily want it to be all of those very positive feeling emotions, right? If you're doing a piece on a sensitive political topic, you might want to get people to question their views about things and to feel a bit uncomfortable during the interaction. And so that's okay too, but it's good to know what your goals are as a designer, what you want people to get out of it before you go in, so then you can tailor that experience to those goals. There's a great example of this from Stephen Schwartz. So during the Cold War, right? We have all these spy films and sort of film noir stuff going on where there's a guy with a briefcase that's handcuffed to his wrist, and he's always following the president around because in the briefcase he's got these codes to launch the nuclear missiles, right? And so the president at any time can ask his assistant or to get these codes and set off the nuclear missiles, right? And so what Stephen proposes is, why don't we, instead of putting the codes in a briefcase, put the codes in a glass pill capsule that gets embedded behind the heart of the assistant. So that if the president wants to launch the missiles, the president can still get the code, but the president has to carve the code out of the assistant's chest, killing the assistant so that the president can launch the missiles. And you might think, that's disgusting, that's terrible. The president would have to kill someone, and it's like, correct, right? Because if you're going to launch nuclear missiles and kill tens of thousands of people, you might want the person in control of launching those missiles to have the direct experience, the visceral experience of killing someone directly. So that is a sort of unique example of wanting an experience goal of an interactive system to be negative and not positive. You don't want that to be a cheerful process, right? Most products, though, we do. So when we're designing an interactive system, we want to think about how do we meet these usability and experience goals. And one way to do that is to follow the interaction design principles.